Am I starting this? All right. You can start. I don't know what you said. You said it last.
You started.
Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Podcast for Sharon Talon. This week, we're going to be talking about who we like to start and who we're going to sit in the different matchups, as well as diving into Thursday Night Football matchup.
All right. So starting things off with Thursday Night Football, I think there was one clear positive sign from Thursday night, which was Robert Woods.
I mean, I'm still not a huge fan of Robert Woods for the rest of the season outlook, but I do think that yesterday was obviously a good sign. I still think that Cooper Kupp is the clear-cut number one with Van Jefferson and Tyler Higbee and even Deshaun Jackson taking targets. There's only one football, but if he can continue to do something close to what he did yesterday, he should be a solid play.
Well, yeah, I don't think anymore that you can consider him the wide receiver one there. I think Kupp has taken that job, but I think this game has just shown that they're going to get Woods more involved and Jefferson is going to become more irrelevant. So you might see a switch in targets of Woods getting more like 10 targets and Kupp getting the 13 to 15 range, but that still makes him a very viable fantasy wide receiver too.
Yeah, I agree. McVay stuck to his word. He got Trees more involved. And, I love to see that being a Robert Woods owner. But, I think I think his production stemmed off of Cooper Kupp being guarded better, and I think the Rams have to continue to exploit that to continue to put up points because I didn't think their offense was very good against a bottom third. I think they're the worst defense in the league, actually. So to not move the ball that well against the worst defense in the league in the first half, they need to have both receivers involved.
Yeah, and if you looked at the second half, you could see they were running plays where it's basically just Kupp took the lead and Woods basically hung behind. So when they collapsed onto Kupp, Woods was just wide open in the middle of the field.
They're just clearing out space with Kupp the entire second half of that game. Like, you can see Kupp looks like taking it underneath routes or going over top, and it's leaving wide open spaces over the middle for Robert Woods to exploit his matchup, whether it be man or zone. It was just a great game plan by Sean McVay to get Woods more involved and to use the attention that Kupp's been drawing being a top wide receiver throughout 4 weeks of football so far.
Yeah.
Another guy who solidified his RB2 status is definitely Darrell Henderson. I personally dislike, but
Henderson is he's a hard runner. He doesn't have that breakaway speed that you might want from a number one or a number two running back on your fantasy team, but he gets touchdowns. He gets in the end zone. He doesn't have a lot of receiving upside, but if he continues to get in the end zone like he has been, he'll be a good option for the rest of the season. Like, I don't think he's had one down game this season. And that's exactly what you need from your RB2 in a very dry RB2 landscape this season.
Yeah, I think what Bill Not Baker said, this year's just not a good year for running backs. And with having a guy like Henderson, who's in all the weeks he's played, has at least 15 fantasy points, he seems very reliable. I don't think people should take into account the fact that Sonny Michel actually got touches this week. That was just because Henderson was on the sideline for like one drive and they decided to run the ball like every play. I still think he's the bell cow in this offense and is easily a top 20 running back at this point for the year.
Yeah, I mean, the offense is such high-powered, too. He's a must-start every week.
I wouldn't say top 15, but
pushing towards it, I said.
Yeah.
I mean, that offense is definitely top.
It's a top 5 offense easily.
Yeah, no, Sean McVay is a great offensive coach, and on top of that, it's honestly still with Stafford, with the wide receiver coach, a run-first type offense at times. But they're more incorporating the pass more into that nowadays, which gives more to their pass catchers and Stafford in the end.
And I guess moving on to the Seahawks was not a great outing for really any of them. Like, you could say DK had a good game, but he really only had 2 touchdowns, and that was most of his work.
only.
Yeah, I mean, he had 2 touchdowns, which made him good in fantasy. But
he had 2 touchdowns and close to 100 yards.
Yeah, but
they asked from him.
He had 5 catches for 98 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's a fantastic
Okay.
game.
It was good for him, but you have to realize they have the lowest.
That's good for anyone.
Yeah, but they have the lowest percentage of. They have the lowest percentage of possession time out of any team in the entire NFL, which means now with the possibility that Russell Wilson could be out, all of the receivers in that field, especially with Carson also hurt, that offense is going to struggle. And
Yeah, I didn't think Alex Collins looked particularly good either. Geno Smith was actually the one bright spot I thought, and that last interception I still don't think was on him at all. I think Tyler Lockett was tripped up. So
as Mitchell mentioned, they have not had the ball a lot this season. Have a very low snap rate compared to the other teams in the league. They're bottom of the barrel for converting on third down, and that I think stems from the lack of run game that they have. Their offensive line is nothing short of terrible, and Alex Collins was pretty good like when he had the football, but Chris Carson has been very inefficient this season, and Alex Collins was pretty inefficient yesterday as well. So I just think that they're not bad players themselves, but the O-line just doesn't give them any opportunity to work, and it doesn't do them any favors.
Well, this year being a dry RB year, what do you guys think like the lower tier RB2 status would be, and what would be like the lower tier RB1 status?
If your RB2 is Chase Edmonds, you are solid, at least for the time being, until James Conner gets out of the offense and he becomes the overall running back one. But Chase Edmonds is a very solid RB2. I think about that range is what you're looking for in an RB2. Henderson being probably top of the RB2 range, and at this point, Miles Sanders maybe bottom.
I think at this point, RB2 is basically anyone who you can get a consistent performance out of at least double digits, which is not many. Like, I think the lowest tier you could ever go is somebody like Mike Davis, who just doesn't do anything, but for some reason gets 10 points. Like, I would never want him in fantasy, but he is the lowest of the low to say, like, fine, I can start him every week and be all right.
I don't know if you necessarily can. I'd say he's more an RB3. And that's just because of like the recent Cordero Patterson success. Like Mike Davis hasn't done anything special.
Has come without the amount of snaps. Patterson has consistently getting the same amount of snaps every week.
Exactly. So eventually Patterson's have to increase snaps based on the way he plays, which would result in Mike Davis being off the field a little bit more.
Point out with Patterson as well, he has the wide receiver upside, so they don't just line him up in the backfield. They line him a lot in the slot and outside with even Davis in the backfield at the same time.
He is that gadget player that the Falcons have been looking for, this exciting offensive player that they needed to fill in for Julio Jones. But Mike Davis, I'm not an offensive coordinator. I'm not a coach, but I know 13 rushes for 14 yards is not good, and therefore they should not give him the ball a lot. They should probably just focus on giving the ball to Patterson, their lone bright spot in the offense, and to see if they can find a different way to get the ball into his hands, because so far he's getting the ball. They're not really winning, but he's getting the football and it's working.
Yeah.
I mean, not to be totally pro Davis, but like a lot of his carries are negative yardage.
Why is that good?
Plays.
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
That's just the D line playing good though. Mostly, like they just busted up the run. They had -3 losses like 4 times, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, but if you can't move the ball, you're not that great of a running back. So I guess like onto that overall London game, the only guy I really want to start on the Falcons is probably Cordero Patterson, just because of the fact that Ridley, Gage, like their whole team's not playing, which means Patterson's going to work into the pass game, the run game. He's going to be all over the field. I don't know how many snaps he's going to play just because that's how they work him, but there's a different, like, you want snaps, yes, but he gets quality snaps, and they always give him the ball when he's on the field. Davis hasn't done anything with his actual snaps to make him that good of a fantasy player.
Speaking of the Falcons Jets game. Do we think that Kyle Pitts is an every week starter at this point, or is he more of like a tight end type player?
I mean, I still think he's an every week starter just because, like, running back, besides maybe the top 5 tight ends being Kittle, Kelsey, Waller, Hawkinson, and Andrews, I don't know if anyone's been reliable in any way. So I still think Pitts has upside. And I think this week will be a big test with them not having their number 1 receivers, either Patterson or Olamide Zacchaeus. So I think this is the week where you're either going to see Pitts just go off, or you should start to worry and maybe think that he is only a tight end too.
Yeah, well, I'm starting to lean towards tight end too, just because of the tendency that rookie tight ends seem to struggle, and that we're about to be 5 weeks into the season, and he hasn't really done anything at the draft capital that the Falcons selected him at. 4th overall pick. You expect him to get involved. I'd much rather start a guy like Dalton Schultz or Dallas Goedert or
Dawson Knox.
To be honest. I'd rather start all 3 of those guys than Kyle Pitts. I just have no confidence in him getting the ball from Matt Ryan.
He has less points than Zach Ertz. He has less points than Hunter Henry. He has less points than CJ Uzoma. Do not start him. This week you could start him, but if he does bad this week,
and then on to the Jets. Is there anyone you guys actually want to start on that team this week?
Corey Davis.
Corey Davis.
Corey Davis.
Yeah.
Corey Davis is probably the only player in the Jets team you would ever want to start.
I think there's
Corey
3
Davis.
guys.
Corey Davis
Get
going to
into
finish the
lineups.
wide receiver 1 this week.
I think
I'm keeping
Jamison
it-
Crowder could also sneak into a couple lineups at a flex play. I
I
don't think
wouldn't-
he's a bad option.
Yeah,
I
also-
wouldn't like that though, because honestly, the only wide receiver who's been a constant on that team has been Davis.
Davis has not been a constant on that team.
Nobody's been a
Not at all.
constant because Zach
Davis
Wilson
has-
can't.
I mean, for the Jets at least, the only constant is Davis. Jets play.
I mean, the problem with the Jets
you
though
can
is
consider-
you're not going to find a constant. The guy I'm
Yeah,
keeping an eye.
exactly. I'd keep an eye on Michael Carter. I think he could have a
That's what I
breakout
was-
week this week.
You can.
That's what I
I
was
mean,
going to say. I would not start Carter this week
been a-
necessarily, but I would keep an eye on him, as this could be the week where he just goes off and takes over.
the only thing Michael Carter has been constant is constantly disappointing.
He's had some decent weeks, but
Corey Davis, though, back to what Rohan said, I don't think you can consider him even close to a constant, even for the Jet standards. 26, 2, 9, 23. Those are just his point totals from the first 4 weeks. Extremely inconsistent, getting towards some 2020 Tyler Lockett numbers right there. I just don't think that you can really think of him as an every week starter. I think this week he's going to go off, but I mean, he's hard to trust in any 10-man lineup. Maybe you can put him at flex in a 12-man lineup. But, I mean, I'm starting Cole Beasley over him. I'm starting Laviska Shenault over him.
I'm starting Jamison Crowder over him. Jamison Crowder had 15+ points in his first game of the 2021 season. And he was the only constant for the Jets last year, and we can all agree that too. He was the actual bright spot on their team. I don't know why he's being faded lower. Like he had an injury, a slight injury, had COVID, but he doesn't look any different than he looked last year. And Zach Wilson gave him the most targets in his only game. So
Very true.
and I think the problem was, which was proven wrong, was I think going into the year they thought that like Elijah Moore would be the wide receiver 2, and you'd have Jamison Crowder only playing the slot, which just isn't the case. So I think he is very viable in fantasy, but I still probably would, if I could, I'd like to sit him out this week and let him show me one more time that he is a consistent performer, because I don't think you can call him consistent after only 1 week.
I think, can we shift gears here into the Sunday mid-afternoon games, starting here with the Patriots-Texans. Are there any fantasy starters from this week?
Myers. Really? Myers.
I'd say Myers, Cooks,
Harris, maybe? Harris.
Cooks. I
Definitely
forgot
Harris.
about Cooks. Cooks is a starter.
and I agree with Damian Harris. I think this is a easy matchup. I think people are fading Harris too quickly just because of the fact that
He's not getting the football.
well, he wasn't getting the football. We also played
They're
the
playing Tampa Bay. Like, why would
He
you
has
hand it
10
off?
rushes over the last 2 weeks. 10 rushes for 10 yards over the last 2 weeks.
if you look at the defenses they played. They played two of the best rush defenses in the NFL. Now he's having some of the easier ones. I think he'll have a better week. And once again, with no real running back security, I think he should finish as at least an RB2 this week.
I am not starting in any leagues if I have him, just because of the recent downward trend in his carries. And I think Ramondre Stevenson will play this week. He's not gonna take many carries, but he'll take.
I'm pretty sure Brandon Bolden's the backup, not
Bolden is the
Ramondre.
backup.
The RB depth chart right now is literally it's most likely Harris, then Bolden, then J.J. Taylor, and Ramondre Stevenson are both in a dog pound for costly fumbles for the Patriots.
Yeah, I don't know. So Baker, so what happens if you have a team that has like Miles Sanders and Damian Harris? Who are you starting of between those two? Like,
I'm starting Damian Harris just with a
Exactly.
touchdown upside. I think he can walk into the end zone maybe once. I think Miles Sanders is completely benchable with the Gainwell success and the fact that Sirianni has just completely abandoned the run game.
Oddly enough.
Yeah. All right.
Sticking with the 4:00 window for Sunday,
The 1 o'clock.
Cleveland has a backfield issue with Hunt and Chubb. Which one is the better back?
I don't really know if it's an issue.
Yeah, what issue?
They're managing it pretty well for football standards. I mean, obviously in terms of fantasy, you're not getting what you want, but everyone drafted Nick Chubb knowing you needed TDs, and everyone drafted Kareem Hunt knowing you're getting the receiving upside. I mean, obviously if one goes down, you're getting an RB1, but as of now, I'd say they're both high-end RB2s.
I guess I agree. I mean, I think both of them, it's basically whoever gets the touchdown has a good week. Whoever doesn't has at best an okay week. I think at this point though, for the next few weeks, they're both very viable fantasy players just because of the fact that there's no wide receiving core right now in Cleveland, which means you can factor Kareem Hunt more into the pass and still let Chubb get all the work and make them both get enough points to be viable. I think Hunt has a better floor because he'll get receiving work, which just gets you straight up points. I mean, Chubb will probably rush for whatever 80, 100 yards a game, but if he doesn't get any catches or touchdowns, that's 8 or 10 points, and that's not the week you're looking for.
Of course, they're both going to be viable every week. Like, it's Kareem Hunt and Chubb. But I think what we're looking for with at least Chubb, if not Hunt at this point, more than a viable option. You want 20 points. And I'm just not sure if either of them can give that to you this week. Of course, I'm starting both of them. I'm hammering them. Like, they're both. If I had both of them, they'd be my RB1 and 2. But Chubb needs a touchdown and Hunt needs receptions, and if they don't get those, they won't play as well as they can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
they're getting 12 to 13 touches a game each, so they have to be extremely efficient with those touches to provide value for their players.
Yeah, and on the other side of that game, you have the Chargers. From that, I'm probably starting. I think all of their offense. I'd probably start Herbert, Williams.
That's a high-powered offense with everybody mostly being a must start.
I'm starting Eckler, Herbert, Allen, Williams, and possibly Jared Cook, depending on, like, if I have him, it probably means I don't have a better tight end, so I don't really have a choice, but I don't think he's bad. He had a touchdown last week.
Austin Eckler is here. He dispelled the rumors that he wasn't good in the run game by going 15 attempts for 117 yards and a touchdown against the Raiders defensive front, but I think he is an excellent option this week.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very happy to have him as my RB1.
Yeah, this could be a surprise to many, but I'm actually fading Mike Williams this week. I saw it last week that it was kind of their old offense again, relying on Eckler, feeding Allen targets, and kind of just not really looking at Mike Williams besides a couple plays. And I think that could definitely happen again. I think people, based on those first 3 weeks, like, they overreact. Like, he's a great football player. He's a good red zone threat, but I don't think he's like a phenomenal receiver by any means. I still think Keenan Allen's the clear-cut number 1. He had 11 targets last week. I still think that he gets those amount of targets. I think he starts to actually have more production off those targets. I still think Eckler's the focal point of the offense. Yeah, I just don't think it's going to be a good Mike Williams week again.
I can buy that.
Browns defense is a very solid defense.
Yeah.
Agree. All right, going back to the 1 o'clock window, I guess the next game we can look at is Eagles Panthers. Anyone you guys are actually starting in this game?
DJ Moore.
Christian McCaffrey.
If McCaffrey,
McCaffrey is trending towards playing, so
yeah, if McCaffrey,
honestly is as per usual the must start in this game.
Even if he doesn't play, he's still more likely to get me points than Miles Sanders.
that is very true.
DJ Moore is a stud. He has been an absolute bright spot for that team. Sam Darnold's clear-cut favorite. This is the DJ Moore that everyone has been hoping for in Carolina the past couple of years. They're finally getting that wide receiver 1 production out of him.
I think he's easily a top 10 receiver at this point. But
I am gonna go out on a limb here and say that Robbie Anderson is gonna have his first good game of the season. He's been extremely disappointing for owners this year, but I think it's a perfect spot for him to turn it around here and actually do something from that wide receiver position that they need so desperately next to or across from DJ Moore. He had 11 targets last week and he's trending up. I just think that he can be started in leagues. In leagues if you have injuries or bye weeks or something. I don't know, are there bye weeks this week? But I just think that he could potentially go off this week if you want to take the risk.
Look at the script. Let's look at the Eagles real quick. And other than Hurts, who's a start on that offense?
They need Travis Fulgham
pretty
back,
good, right?
Yeah. But no one's playing.
I think Dallas Goedert to start at tight end. I think he sneaks in the top 8 every week. Like, I mean, that position's a mess. You never know. But I think he's an option. But Hurts is the only guy that's a lock in lineups. Miles Sanders is benchable.
I think you could consider Goddard a lock in lineups at this point, especially as Mitchell mentioned, the dry tight end landscape. Goddard is definitely a good option. He's always sure to get some red zone targets, even with Ertz there. And rest of the season, if Ertz does get dealt at the trade deadline, he'll be automatically a tight end.
That's fine. I'm going to try to trade with him.
Yeah, really, no problem.
Let's look at that late window real quick and look at the San Fran Arizona game. And what team do you guys think are must starts? Bench.
I think for the Cardinals, I'm starting Kyler and Hopkins, obviously, and Chedmans. I don't know if I'm starting anyone else. I think the rest of those receivers fluctuate from week to week on who's actually going to get more work. On the 49ers side, I don't know if I'm starting Lance yet. I'm probably not starting any of the running backs. Probably just Deebo Samuel and Kittle for me.
Yeah, I'd have to agree.
I don't know if there's a lot of debate there, aside from maybe Trey Lance, but only if you don't really have a better option.
Maybe Elijah
Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, I was gonna say if Elijah Mitchell plays, then maybe a flex play if you need it. But I don't think Sermon's been running the ball. I don't think Sermon's been running the ball very well at all.
Well, in my opinion,
not. No.
In my opinion, in all of fantasy this year, if I'm playing somebody at flex, I'm playing a receiver. I'm not playing a running back no matter what. If I have a good enough running back to play at flex, I'm trading them because somebody probably needs it more than I do. And I could probably get more value out of it.
Also, even if Eli Mitchell does suit up, I'm probably not going to play him just because he will be limited. Like he's not a clear-cut number 1 back that they're going to force him.
Yeah, it's more of a 1A, 1B with him and Sermon.
I think they're not. Either way, Sermon will be the number 1 back this week if he does suit up.
Mm-hmm. All right. I guess next game we can talk about is Packers Bengals. From here, who are you guys starting?
Packers by a million.
Well, who are you
hammering
starting?
CJ Uzomah?
I mean, Rodgers, Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, the whole nine offense is must start, honestly.
In the Bengals, I'm fading Tyler Boyd, seeing that Higgins is probably coming back. I'm probably starting Chase, Higgins.
I'm fading P. Ryan. I don't think he hasn't been efficient since his 2013 college season. He was bad the last couple of years he's been on the Redskins. I mean, there's no thought in my mind to get him in the lineup.
Yeah, and I think they're going to go back to what they did last year, which is just a pass-heavy offense, which I think means Higgins and Chase are going to have very big weeks this week. And I think Boyd's just going to go back to his slot role and put up all right numbers. If he gets a touchdown, he'll have a good week. If he doesn't, I think he'll have a average week at best.
I'm not starting him, but I think Chris Evans could potentially be pretty good as that one B position with Samaje Perine, the pass catching back. He could potentially fit into a Giovanni Bernard role. Maybe get like 6 catches, maybe like 10 points.
And with this year, that's honestly not a bad week in fantasy, if you can guarantee that. All right. I think that game is pretty obvious. I guess interesting game could be Steelers Broncos. Here's where I think you have some interesting starts. If I can here, I think I'm fading both Denver running backs, which means the only guys I'm starting on Denver is probably Fant and Sutton. But
I think Najee is going to have a good game in the receiving aspect.
Who?
Najee Harris.
Oh, all right. Sorry, I didn't.
yeah, I don't know.
As a running back, he has really good receiving upside against this Broncos D line, which is incredible against the run. I don't feel like Pittsburgh's going to attempt to run the ball much with them, considering their offensive line. And I feel like he's going to be a good RB1 play this week.
I mean, Big Ben can't throw the ball more than 6 yards down the field. So when that's the case, then yeah, you kind of do have to dump it off to Najee about 32 times the game. So yeah, Najee and Deontay, just because he has an extreme percent of that target share, but everyone else in that offense I'm fading.
Yeah.
Juju, if he even plays, Claypool, if he plays, they're not in my lineup.
Yeah. Also, I'm obviously starting Najee, but I don't think there's a chance he really finishes as an RB1. I think Denver D's too good, and I don't think Big Ben knows how to play football enough to make him an RB1. I think he'll be a solid RB2 this week, but I don't think he'll be as good as you guys were making him out to be.
All right, I think we need to address the elephant in the room here. Sunday night, Bills, Chiefs. First and foremost, who do you have winning this game?
I have Bills.
I feel like the Bills spent this entire offseason just building for this one game to look at the defense. And I don't think the defenses are going to start for this game. The offenses are way too high powered, so I feel like the Bills defense can probably get a couple of takeaways, maybe one or two to lead them to allowing. And I feel like, honestly, Allen and the 3 receivers are all must-starts this week.
I don't know.
I'm going to go Bills. I mean, I think they're a more complete football team. I also think the Chiefs have shown weakness this year. There's 2 games where when you shut out Tyreek Hill, when you take him out of the game plan, it kind of disrupts that offense and makes them not flow well. And I think the Bills are certainly capable of doing that. I think McDermott can absolutely do that. And I think that offense is extremely good. And I don't see the Chiefs stopping them once.
Mm-hmm. And I think at this point, I'm probably starting as many Bills players as I can, seeing that the Chiefs have not.
Their defense is atrocious.
Yeah, their defense has the least amount of points they let up is 29, which means I think Diggs is bound to have a 20-something point week.
Yeah, I actually disagree. I think that Diggs, he could have that good game as anyone can, but I think actually, obviously you're starting Stephon Diggs. I think that the other receivers in that offense, including Dalton Knox, Cole Beasley, and Gabriel Davis, and Emmanuel Sanders, I think they're really going to be the focal point of this week, with most of the defensive strategy going to be to take out Stephon Diggs from the game.
I feel like from what teams have seen so far, you can't take away Stephon Diggs. If you take away Stephon Diggs, you lose the game. You just leave everybody else open. So I feel like it's going to be a big Diggs week. I feel like Diggs is going to show what he did at the end of last season this week. That's showing a lot of like his third down conversion ability and him being Josh Allen's favorite target, honestly.
And I don't,
Diggs week.
yeah, I don't see how Diggs won't have a good week because also they can try to just guard Diggs, but that defense is so bad. I don't think they even could. Like, I don't think they can make a plan to try to lock down one guy because I don't think they have the ability to at this point. They haven't proven it.
All right.
We should probably move over to the Monday night game now. Indianapolis versus Baltimore. Of course, Lamar Jackson is a must start if he plays as per usual.
Honestly, I think there's 3 guys you can start in this game, and that's Pittman, Jonathan Taylor, and Lamar. I don't think I'm starting.
Starting Mark Andrews? You're not going to start Mark Andrews if you haven't?
Yeah, I'm starting Mark Andrews. I forgot about him, but I'm not starting. I think Pittman's fine just because there's not much out there. I think he's a flex play, not like a wide receiver 2 by any means. But then Taylor's, I think, is a must start just because the talent's there at least. And with this year, I think if you're a running back with enough talent, you don't really got a choice. You got to start them, even if they've been struggling a little bit.
I think that all right, actually let me rephrase that.
At quarterback? I'd have to say Josh Allen.
I mean, yeah, that's pretty obvious. I feel like you're gonna start Josh Allen if you have Josh Allen. I agree. I think hot take Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is actually probably gonna have a solid game.
Yeah, Daniel's going to have like a top 8 fantasy quarterback week this week, in my opinion. Except that Dallas defense, even how bad it is kind of decent at times. Especially on the secondary.
Okay.
I think it's Allen. Honestly, I'd just say Allen and Mahomes are probably the top 2 because I think Allen's going to easily be able to beat up this offense, and I think the Chiefs are going to have to throw for 500 yards to win this game. So,
what are we thinking about Matt Ryan?
I do not see him having a good defensive game because their offensive line sucks. The best D line is honestly decent times, and they have their receivers are not playing.
Yeah, a lot of those factors go into it. Especially, I'm definitely fading Matt Ryan this week, especially after his excellent performance against Washington. But he is facing the Jets' soft secondary, even with Bryce Hall playing as well as he is. And I think that I'm not starting him, but if you need to,
you can start
not
it.
a bad option.
Yeah. And then finally, I think we include this Tannehill versus Jacksonville defense.
bench.
Ryan Tannehill has shown absolutely nothing, given me zero confidence in him.
And-
He can be dropped.
And that whole receiving core is banged up. Like even their 3rd string Westbrook Akina, I think, didn't practice. So
He didn't practice it. AJ Brown is trending towards playing though.
I think versus the Jags, I'm starting Derrick Henry. I mean, I'll start the receivers, but I would not start Tannehill. I don't think for the rest of the season he's a top 12 Q.
I'm starting Laviska Shenault.
That's true too.
And I'm starting Marvin Jones.
And I'm starting James Robinson.
100%.
And maybe
All right.
Dan Arnold as a sleeper.
And one last point. Sorry. What about Kirk Cousins?
I feel like he's a sleeper start.
I think
Lions,
he's a start. He's a must start versus the Lions. I think he's gonna have a good game. Like
I was looking Panthers. I was definitely gonna say not a start, but that is actually week 6. So
Must start against that Lions defense. Yeah.
unless you have a better option, which a lot of people don't, sadly.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
I feel like that's all we have.